I believe she's supposed to be moving today. Ashley Bastock, Cleveland.com on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. Ashley, welcome back to the show.
Guys, I am moving today. Not supposed to be. I'm moving today. So I'm in the middle of the process here, but I'm taking time to talk to you guys. And I've had some questions. Are you leaving Cleveland? Are you leaving the Browns? No, I'm here to stay. But I am moving where I live, and it is a brutal day. But I knew the second I had everything booked, this was going to be the day something happened. I knew it. So
what's more
it.
brutal, Ashley, the sub-zero temperatures or the fact that the Monken hire came at the beginning of the day, which really is just going to screw up all of the moving?
I'm going to go with the hiring. But honestly, this is why I believe in hiring professionals for this job. I believe in using movers, so I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I had it all planned out. I did break the news to my movers, though, this morning, so I think they were a little grateful to get assigned that job as Browns fans today.
Nothing more satisfying than breaking news to random people. I don't know why. I enjoy that thrill of that. But actually, all right. It seems like the most important part of this, and first off, what is your just actual reaction to the idea that it is Monken? We had all sorts of ebbs and flows throughout this search. Nobody had Monken at any point at the top of their list, and he ends up being the last one standing.
I was surprised, but I wasn't, right? And I think I've talked about it on here. I know we've spent a lot of time on our podcast, the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, talking about this as a possibility. My colleague, Mary Kay Cabot, really over the last few weeks has been trying to paint this still as very much a possibility. For me, the signs were there in the sense that Todd Monken didn't pull out of this job pull out of the hunt for this job. Because he could have left at any point and said, I'm going to go be John Harbaugh's OC in New York, and I'm sure that would have very easily happened. But he didn't, which really kind of affirmed that, hey, he's actually in this thing. And as we went through this process, I'm like, man, everyone's fighting over these younger guys. Everyone's so focused on them. And, look, I think Brown's Twitter really latched on to them. But I'm like, no one's talking about Todd Monken. So it was surprising. And to me, I think it's definitely the toughest sell this organization has to make to a fan base now of those four guys, really, that were left. I think this is the hardest sell just across the board. And I think it gets harder with all of this latest Jim Schwartz reporting. I mean, that to me is going to just add to the difficulty of, I think, selling this to a lot of people. But I think it's something over the next few days. I think people will warm up to certain things about Todd Monken, right? Like this fact that he's very old school. He has that sort of reputation. He's hard on the players in the sense of he's a tough love kind of coach, not really a player's coach. And I think a lot of Browns fans will like those things, but I think it's undeniable that for most people this is just a shock, but it's why we kind of just tried to repeatedly reiterate that he was still in play for this job.
So I guess we'll get to the Schwartz part of this. You were the one that had the exclusive with Jim Schwartz after Kevin gets fired about how Jim would like to be the head coach again and how he feels like he's ready for that. Actually, that was even before that. That was leading into the end of the season where Jim just said he wanted to be a head coach again. Do you think there's a path to Jim Schwartz coming back to Cleveland and being the defensive coordinator under Todd Monken?
I mean, you can never say never, but I'll say it doesn't sound good right now. And I think all the reporting and from everything I know about Jim, from working with Jim, if he wants something, he's going to, I think, do everything in his power to get it. So, yes, he is under contract for here next year, and the team would like to keep him. But, I mean, I think already from the reporting we've seen today about him, being visibly upset and telling people in the building supposedly that he wasn't going to be back, that he was done with the Browns, that's the kind of ugliness that you get when somebody's disgruntled. I think it just maybe signals some wires got crossed somewhere, or Jim Schwartz really thought he had this job. And I don't know. It's like this kind of emotional reaction in any instance, I think, just goes to show that some communication down the line got broken off, right? And I think you could never say never because he is under contract, but he certainly sounds unhappy right now. I think it's easy to understand why. And look, like I don't know exactly what their thought process was in all of this. Like if they thought Todd Monken and Jim Schwartz would be the best pairing or their best chance to keep Jim, if that played a factor at all, I don't know. But I think losing Jim Schwartz to me would be a huge loss for this team. I think there's some rewriting of his resume going on right now on social media that, you know, people wanting to say with like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, that anyone can coach this defense. Well, no, they can't, because Joe Woods had all those players too, I'll remind people, and it didn't go so well, which is why you had to hire Jim Schwartz. And my kind of talking around Jim Schwartz when I brought him up has been this idea of not many people play defense like him. Like the 49ers and Robert Saleh are one of the few teams that do. Obviously, the Browns never even interviewed Robert Saleh for this head coaching job. But his system is not like a lot of systems, and this defense is really molded in his image. And I think you can't just say anyone can walk off the street and coach this defense and have success, because it's just not true, and ask Joe Woods about it.
Is it as simple as just looking at it and thinking maybe the Browns thought, if we want both them here, we have to give Monken the head coaching job, because if not, he's just going to be the OC for Harbaugh in New York?
I mean, maybe. Like, again, I'm sure when they do the introductory with Todd Monken, introductory press conference with him in the coming days or weeks, whenever that ends up being, like, this is going to be part of the line of questioning, especially if things still are not rectified involving Jim Schwartz. But you do have to believe that's part of it. Like, why would you take the OC job here when you can go and be an OC job or be an OC under John Harbaugh, who really went to bat for you? You know what your quarterback answer is in New York, obviously, already with Jackson Dart. You really get in on the ground floor of helping to mold that offense. So it's just undeniably a more attractive job. I don't see how you could keep him here other than maybe trying to throw more money at it. And with Jim Schwartz, look, the money, I'm sure, could eventually become a factor. We know the Browns, will spend if they want to invest in someone. But I think with Todd Monken and just that relationship with John Harbaugh, it would have been very difficult to keep him in the building if they didn't give him that top job. And if they liked him enough, you can see where that thinking starts to snowball.
Ashley Bastock of Cleveland.com breaking down the Todd Monken hiring here on the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline. So I think some fans looked at this and said, whether it's because of the Schwartz piece or the fact you're hiring a first-time head coach, that maybe this is now going to open the gates and open the floodgates on a full and total rebuild. Do you look at this as a rebuild hire, or do you look at this as a let's go ahead and start trying to win games as quickly as possible kind of hire?
Well, that's like the million-dollar question with this team right now, and I think it's hard to look at them and say, oh, yeah, this is like a win-now football team when they don't have that obvious answer at quarterback. Like, I mean, his top two options in theory are going to be Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. Like, there's a lot of unknown there. So it's hard to say, like, if this is strictly like a, hey, we're in the rebuild and we're going to hire this guy to take the fall. I think that's a lot of, like, very pre-planned, extremely, like, sort of forward thinking that you don't really account for. Like, Todd Monken's not going to take this job if he just thinks he's coming here to be a fall guy. He's had a lengthy career. He could, as we've said, go and coach in New York, and I'm sure have plenty of success still working with John Harbaugh. But he chose to come here still. Like, this is a two-way street. So there must be some things here that he thinks he can work with, can help mold. Maybe the Browns liked his plans for this offense. But it's like, for me, the Browns have really been trying to straddle two worlds. Like, it's not that they are intentionally tanking, but they basically did tank in 2024 without trying, right? And wound up with the draft pick they did, and then they traded and got another one. So it's like a soft rebuild, a soft tank, whatever you want to call it. I think they're kind of in that stage and need to really hit on this year's draft again.
Because of the Ravens' past interest in Shedeur, do you think this is a positive for Shedeur Sanders, or it's just way too early to tell because we don't know Monken's role in that?
I mean, I think on the surface level, it should be viewed as a positive for Shedeur because Todd Monken has, helped with some really good offenses. He's gotten a lot out of the quarterbacks he's coached. Now, Lamar Jackson is very good. I mean, obviously Lamar Jackson was an MVP when Greg Roman was there as well. But I think you look at some of the explosiveness of those offenses, those systems. That explosiveness is, I think, like one of the best parts of Shedeur's game. And Todd Monken, who's been around the college level, who's been around the NFL level, knows about developing quarterbacks. And I think at the end of the day, a second-year quarterback is still developing. You're not at your ceiling yet. So it's not a bad thing to say a guy is still developing or needs more development, because just about everyone still does at that stage of their career. So I think for a young quarterback, it'll be an interesting perspective shift with Todd Monken there for sure.
Ashley, if Jim Schwartz does leave, how concerned should we be that might also mean Myles Garrett wants to leave next?
I mean, I think it's a legitimate concern. And again, I'm getting told I'm overblowing this on Twitter, but I really think it should be talked about and noted. Like, it is worth talking about how much these guys like. It's not just that they like playing for Jim Schwartz. Like, they do, right? And he's a good culture setter. But they've had the number one defense in basically every major stat over a 3-year period. Over a 3-year period, they're the only defense to allow opponents fewer than 300 yards a game. They lead the league in tackles for loss over that period. Myles has won, well, he's going to be winning his second NFL Defensive Player of the Year award next week probably, and he just broke the sack record. These guys, it's not just about Jim Schwartz, it's about this system, which a lot of teams don't run. So if you're suddenly telling Myles Garrett and these guys, oh, we're going back to more zone, which, again, what they did with Joe Woods, we're going to 2 high safeties, we're only going to have 3 down linemen in our base. Now, granted, no one plays in their base anymore, but I think you're going to have some unhappy campers. And what I'll tell people who are like, oh, you can't do it because of the cap, I think you can always find workarounds around that. I was looking at some of the numbers for, like, in theory, a post-June 1st trade today, if it would get ugly or something. But I think it's something you have to worry about, given what happened last year with Myles Garrett, because even though this team hasn't won the way they've wanted to the last 2 years, some of these defenders have still had really good individual seasons. The defense as a whole really was the best defense in the NFL for most of the year. They were a Super Bowl caliber defense, and they couldn't get any help. So, again, I think there's some people wanting to brush past this and not think, oh, it's not a big deal. Anyone can coach this defense. But I don't think it's true, and I think it's something that people should be wary about.
Ashley, do you believe that Jimmy Haslam took the power away from his GM and Andrew Berry in making this decision?
I think with how the Browns do things, like, that's always going to be a popular narrative surrounding Jimmy Haslam. And without being in the room, it's like, we just don't know, right? But I think knowing Andrew Berry, you would have thought, or I would have assumed, that a guy like Udinsky or Shieldhouse, more that sort of younger profile offensive coach that's up and coming, would have been more his style. But I've also heard that, hey, these guys genuinely like Todd Monken. So I think both things can sort of be true. You can like those sort of guys, but then like what Todd Monken brings, obviously the Browns have played against him 2 times a year, played against those offenses 2 times a year. I actually think Todd Monken was one of the best at game planning for this Browns defense. So who knows? Like, all of that came into factor. But again, I mean, when they do this intro presser and availability, I'm sure all of this is going to get asked. I'd be really surprised if it doesn't.
Ashley, great stuff as always. Enjoy the rest of moving and, getting stuff where it needs to go in the new apartment or the new house. We appreciate you. We'll talk to you next Wednesday.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Ashley Bastock there, Cleveland.com on the Make It Right Call Kyle Wright hotline.